Dear folks, I told Jean that I would make her a good wife. We make our own beds, wash our own clothes, scrub the floor every morning, wash the windows about every other day. We have to be in by 11, but the lights are all out at 9 o'clock. They have a theater in the camp and a post exchange where you can get anything you want at a reduced price. I'll fight the Japs all by myself to get this war over. We're going to Jefferson Barracks tomorrow morning at 7:45. I will write again as soon as I get my address. Tell the gang hello. Love, Lefty.
My name is Allen Leighty. My date of birth is 7/15/1922. My life was just average. My brothers and I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but we had a lot of fun. I always went to high school in Woodruff High School in Peoria, Illinois. I high jumped. I was about 5'5", and I could jump over my height by about an inch, and with what they call a Western roll. And now they jump and they call it some kind of a flop now, where you throw your head over first and then the rest of you follows. That's about all I can say. And that's all the sports I was in. But like I said, I wasn't very big. It was during the Depression, and my folks had kind of a hard time, but we survived. I think all in all, I had a pretty good time. I enlisted in the Air Force, and I enlisted because if you enlist, you have a choice. When I picked Air Force, because I liked the Air Force, I guess, mainly. And if I had to run somewhere, I wanted to be able to run more than 150 yards before I had to stop. And so that was it was an odd feeling, but that's the way I felt, and that's it.
Behind these daily headlines lies the story of the men behind the flyers, the men who keep them flying. What's their story? Now let's see. Take this advanced American aerodrome. Besides the pilots who fly these ships, let's have a look at the other highly trained soldiers who help to get the planes in the air and keep them there. It takes metal workers, welders, machinists, and mechanics to keep the motors turning. Weather observers to tell the pilots when they can take off. These and many others, jobs without which no air combat mission can leave the ground.
When I enlisted, I went just down the road here at Camp Grant. From there, I went to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. And after the basic training, really, I got sent to Chinook Field in Rantoul, Illinois, where I went through a crash course. We learned mechanics, we learned hydraulics, and the last one out of I think it was 10, was engines. But we went through all really the basics of maintaining an airplane and what to do about it if it wasn't working. After that, I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, to Allison Engine School, where we spent 2 weeks learning about an Allison engine. Later on, we went to Hillsgrove in Rhode Island, and where we then were introduced to the P-40, which was the airplane of the choice then. There I met a kid from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. His name was, well, I'll call him C.E. Swan because he didn't like to be called Cecil. Well, C.E. Swan was a troubleshooter for a heavy trucking industry. And so he bypassed all these schools. And so we went down on the flight line together that day. The first time he'd seen a P-40 and the first time I'd seen a P-40. And here come a gas truck. And I looked at C.E. and he looked at me. And, make a long story short, we didn't know where to put gas in the daggone thing. That's the first time we'd seen a P-40. But we learned.
The 325th Fighter Group was activated on August 3, 1942, with 3 fighter squadrons, the 317th, 318th, and 319th, which were stationed in Hillsgrove, Rhode Island, Bedford, Massachusetts, and Hartford, Connecticut, respectively. Allen was assigned to the 318th Fighter Group and moved to join them at Grenier Field in Manchester, New Hampshire, in October of 1942.
I guess the first thing I'll tell you about is the weather. The temperature is 20 below zero now, and it is only 10 p.m. That's too damn cold for anybody's blood. I've got some bad news for you. I may as well tell you now and get it over with. I've been made an armorer. Why? I don't know. They say it won't be permanent, but I'm afraid I might be stuck with it. Wish everyone a Merry Christmas for me. Love to all, Allen.
Our role basically was to get that airplane in the air so that the pilot could go on his missions. We had an inspection every morning on the airplane. And with us, ground crew, we had an airplane that we had to maintain. In the P-40, we had 6 50 caliber machine guns, and on those planes we had a bomb rack with a 50 pound or a 500-pound bomb on it. In the 50 calibers on the machine guns, they had rows of them, and along the wing on each side. There was 8 shells. And then they'd be different, like one of them would be armor piercing, another would be a tracer, and another would be incendiary. And so there were different kinds of shells there. And then the last 75 rounds, they would all be tracers. And then when the tracers started coming through, the pilot knew he was about out of ammo. I can imagine how a German pilot would figure out that somebody was behind him and all they was doing was his airplane was falling apart. Because those shells, boy, they were big. 50 caliber, they're about that long, about that big around. Planes would get shot up and they'd be scrapped. So new planes would come in. Then we would have to sight the guns in. And so we'd make a big revetment up and they'd sight the airplane in. And at that 250 yards, all these shells were supposed to come together. And that's what we had to do. I can't remember very much had any thoughts about it. I just thought, well, we got to do it, and here we are. The pilots went to Delaware someplace, and were loaded onto an aircraft carrier, and they flew from there to Africa. We, the ground crew, we went to New York.
Dear folks, we can now tell something of our activities of the last few months. I may as well start at Grenier Field. On January 24th at about 7:30 p.m., we boarded a special train bound for Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. We arrived there at about daybreak of January 25th. We hiked what seemed like miles until we came to our barracks. We had to stand inspection after inspection here. We spent 16 days at Kilmer, and then at 3:13 p.m. on the 7th of February, we started for the trains with full equipment. We boarded the trains and whizzed through to New York, where we were put on a tug and taken off at Staten Island. Most of the boys were pretty solemn. We knew this was what we had all joined up for. We were put on a Navy ship that was a beauty. We were pretty lucky about this. Most of the ships served only 2 meals, but this one served 3. The bunks were 5 high and right next to each other. On the morning of the 8th, we lifted anchor. Since I was listed as an armorer, I was selected to man one of the many cannons on the ship. This let me out of any detail. We were on the water for 14 days. At 2:30 a.m., we docked at Oran.
We landed 4 or 5 days after the invasion of North Africa, and it was a mess. Because what the United States Navy didn't sink, the French sunk themselves to keep them from getting captured. It was in the winter as far as Africa is concerned, and it didn't snow or anything, get real cold, but it rained every day, every day.
We rode for about an hour and then hiked another 4 kilometers to a camp which we called Mud Hill. I never did learn the real name.
Is that there was a weapons carrier alongside of us, and we were walking. Nobody wanted to drop out because, well, you chicken, you can't take it, huh? Because we were Air Force and we weren't marching very much. We were mechanics. We knew how to fix the dang thing, but we didn't know how to walk very much. But anyway, about halfway through down to there, one kid dropped out. And man, did we give him the business. So we got to this camp. There was a bunch of tents, really, all set up for us. And a couple of days later, we heard that this kid had a hip so bad that it's a wonder he could walk at all, much less walk all that way.
In Tafarui, the entire 318th Fighter Group was united for the first time. There they completed the final phase of operational training, flying patrol and convoy escort missions, and combat formation flights. The 318th Fighter Group left Tafarui on April 7, 1943. They moved to another airbase in Algeria to begin combat training and flew their first mission 10 days later on April 17, 1943. One plane was lost to flak, but the pilot survived and earned the first confirmed aerial victory for the squadron.
When we first got to Africa, we were more just flying flights of opportunity. And there was there's a little island called Sardinia that really caught heck, because it was on the way to Italy, and they'd fly over Italy, and Sardinia was an action of opportunity. If they saw anything, they'd fire at it, shoot it down, if they could, and they did pretty good. And then we'd go on to like Naples and hit the airports at Naples, and looking for opportunity to shoot something up, but they just couldn't find anybody. Especially along in started 1945 or something. The Allies, they had everybody on the run, so there wasn't a lot of opportunities, I'll put it. They used to shoot up lighthouses and they'd have haystacks too. The Germans would have haystacks, and they would be haystacks. The only thing is they'd have German 88s underneath them or something, and so the pilots they'd shoot up haystacks whether they had anything under them or not. Just opportunities.
The 325th Fighter Group continued to fly sorties over the Mediterranean until the end of the conflict in North Africa, a little over a month later.
It was 110 degrees in the shade and no shade, just like a desert. We had to take care of the airplanes, and at that time, there was cracks in the ground that you could drop a wrench in, and we had to take a tarp and put underneath the airplane when we went to do the inspections or anything on them, because if we didn't, it was gone. The pilots, who were the heroes in this thing, they flew them and we kept them going, and that's about it.
On June 2nd, 1943, the 318th was ordered to move to a temporary field in Tunisia. During the 2 weeks the squadron stayed there, pilots flew up to 3 missions daily to the island of Pantelleria, which was the first of enemy territory to be defeated through air power alone.
The thousand-legged bugs aren't like you know around here. If one of them run up your arm, it would leave a little bark where one of these legs hit, and it was just like somebody cut you and then they stitched you closed. And the same way with a scorpion. Only the ones in North Africa, those babies were big. We had sea rations at that time, and they came in little cans, about like that. And in our bunk had legs on it, like a tent, like you use today to sleep in tents. Anyway, we took one of these sea ration cans on each leg and filled it full of oil, and then put the legs down in it. That way the scorpions or whatever, they wouldn't come up and get into your bed because they'd have to go through that oil. So that's how we kept them out of there. We'd catch one of the scorpions and a thousand-legged bug and put them in a helmet and watch them fight and bet on them. That was just one of the things we did. Pass the time away, you know. We had a volleyball court set up one time. We'd play volleyball and just wait for the mission to come back. Once it got hot, we just roll up the tent, sit back and play cards or something, and drink real hot coffee and sweat, and the wind would blow through the tent, and that's what kept us cooled off a little bit. But outside of that, all we did was wait for the mission to come back. The guys in the service were very innovative. They could do things. In this pictures, the guys that they fixed up their own shower. with a tank, a belly tank on top. When we got to Italy, they came out with, we got a ration of beer. It was, I can't remember now, 12 cans, something like that. It wasn't enough to make us steady drunks, I'll tell you that. So we got the bright idea that we were flying long-range missions then, and the airplanes would have to go to 30,000 feet. So we got the bright idea, why not put cans of beer in the doggone gun bays, and then when the pilot would come back, we'd have cold beer. It worked fine. Until pilot came back and he said, you know, they had little bitty trim tabs on the wings, and then that way he could trim the airplane so it would fly dead straight. You could just lean back and relax that airplane and just fly straight and level. He came back and he said, I never got that damn plane trimmed all the way over and all the way back. And we got to thinking, oh man. So the next time on a mission, we made sure we put the same amount of cans on each side so that it would trim out. And then when he came back the second time, we told him. He says, from now on, put a beer in for me. That's how he trimmed the airplane.
On the 20th of June, the 318th left the temporary field for their new base in Matua.
I worked on the P-40 to start, and then when we got overseas, we got the P-47s. It was called a Thunderbolt, and man, it was a big, big airplane. It was a monster, and it came back from a mission, especially if they had a low-level mission, and the flak from people shooting at them from the ground, they'd come back with holes in them that you could crawl through, and that airplane still come back home. You didn't dare crawl through it. The aluminum was goofy. It was sharp, and this hole was like that, so you didn't dare crawl through it. But my point was, they took a lot of damage and still come back home.
The P-47 Thunderbolt was the largest single-engine fighter aircraft of World War II. It had a wingspan of 41 feet and stood on its gear at 15 feet tall. The plane was built around its 2,600 horsepower radial engine and weighed a whopping 10,000 pounds empty. Despite its weight, the P-47 flew smoothly at higher altitudes and could escape almost any enemy with a quick dive down, and it could give as well as it could take with its 850 caliber machine guns. The 318th began training with its new P-47s after they moved to their final base in North Africa, Solomon, Tunisia, in November. On November 29, 1943, the 318th learned that they were to move from Solomon to a staging area at Bizerte, from which they would go to Foggia, Italy.
They were flying over these airports up in Italy, and there wouldn't be a plane there. So Colonel Batchelor finally figured out that they must be moving these airplanes, because they'd get them, the Germans would pick them up on the radar and they'd move. And they were going about 450, 500 mile an hour, and Germans with the radar would have enough time to move them. So Colonel Batchelor decided one time to fly at treetop level and take off, and then at about 20 minutes before he got to all these bases up in Italy, in northern Italy, where he'd just raise up. And they caught these airplanes, all these little airplanes moving, big ones, little ones, and everything. And to my recollection, in the thing, they shot down something like 30 airplanes that morning and just caught them all, taken off. And they made aces out of about 4 or 5 pilots that day because they caught them on the ground and just taken off and everything. There's another one almost like it on a seaport town. There were the seaplanes. They caught them doing the same thing.
In March of 1944, the 318th moved from Volga to Luzinya. Beginning in May that year, the squadron began transitioning from P-47 Thunderbolts to the famous P-51 Mustang. The squadron then began to achieve an impressive war record through to the end of the war, starting with the first shuttle bombing mission to Russia in June.
These planes, high in the skies over Germany, were a symbol of the unshakable unity of the Allies in their determination to fight together until victory and peace had been achieved. June 2nd, 1944. On this day, 650 American flying fortresses inflicted severe damage on German defenses along the invasion coast.
The 51s escorted to Moscow. They flew over and dropped the bombs on the oil fields at Ploesti, and then landed in Russia. Stayed 2 or 3 days, and I didn't, but the planes did, and then loaded up with bombs again and bombed them on the way back. It was the only mission that of that kind that was ever made from the Mediterranean theater. There was a lot of them from England. Went over and did the same thing, but we were the only ones. I think it was in our minds, it was kind of the thing that, well, could it be done? And yes, it could, so that's the only one we ever did. That's when all the enlisted men got a pass, go wherever they wanted to, I guess, because I went to the Red Cross and I asked them if they knew where, I think it was the 327th or 329th or some number of this quartermaster supply depot was. And they said, yeah, it was down around Naples, Naples, someplace. So I went to my squadron commander and asked him if I could have an extension on this pass. He said, yeah, go ahead. We're not doing anything anyway. So wherever you went, all you had to do to get where you were going was just thumb like that, and a 6x6, if he was coming by or anything, they just pick you up. And so that's the first thing they'd ask you, where are you going? And the second thing they'd ask you is, where are you from? So anyway, I went down there, and I went the first place I stopped that looked like they had a supply or anything like that. And I asked them if they knew where this supply depot was, and they said, yeah. And I said, well, can you get a hold of them? Well, yeah. So they called, and they called my brother. Well, and it was at this supply depot, and he says, "Where in the hell are you?" And I said, turned around, I says, "Where am I?" And the guy said, "Well, you're here." And I said, "Well, you stay right there," Bill said, and I'll come and get you. And pretty soon he came down, and that's the way I spent some time in Naples with my brother. And when I left there, I had a bag, a barracks bag, a big barracks bag, and he gave me 2 pair of new shoes and all kinds of equipment, about all I could carry. So day I had to leave, one of his Lieutenant Harvey in a Jeep took me down to the airport there. And I walked up to the airport and then and I said, "Have you got anything going to Foggia?" And he said, "Yeah, that B-24 is going right now." I says, "Well, think I can get on it?" And he says, "Sure." So he made a call of some sort, and I ran out, and I got in that 24 and flew back to Foggia with them. And believe me, I just rode. I didn't fly. And it took me the biggest part of a day and a half over the mountains and everything, and they weren't really mountains, but they were very big hills, to get down to Naples. And it took me 45 minutes to get back in that B-24. So that was my visit to my brother Bill. We all had dog tags too. One that you just kept on you kept them both on all the time, but God forbid if you got killed, why they'd yank one of them off. You'd have one there and then one sent to someplace else. We were overseas about, I think, 22 months, something like that. The war was winding down. And so they come out with a rotation system, they called it. And a certain amount of the guys that got to come home. Not the whole group, not the whole squadron, but just individuals. All the guys on one flight we put a dog tag in a helmet. And 27 of us put dog tags in a helmet and drew them out. I think our commander or somebody, an officer, drew them out, drew one out, and mine came out, the first one. So I got to come home early. There's a good part about that and a bad part. I was on a ship coming home, the SS America, I think it was, when President Roosevelt died. I was overseas at that time. When I got home, I went to Fort Sheridan, Missouri, and I got out. Seems to me the 1st of May, something like that. I came home. None of my buddies were home. Nobody was home. So it was a different, I expected, a big deal, have a lot of fun with all the guys, and I was the first one home. I think you've heard me talk about C.E. Swan before. He was my partner. Anyway, we made a pact that if I got home first, I would go to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and see his parents. If he came home first, he'd see mine. Well, I came home first. But I was supposed to be getting married. I started going with this girl when I was 14 years old. One time overseas, I don't know what she did, but it made me mad. I don't know why, but I told her I wouldn't marry her if she was the last girl on earth. Anyway, I got back from Fort Sheridan in May 25th, I think. I'm not sure about that, but we were going to get married 30 days later. But I had to go to Cape Girardeau to see his parents. So I did. And I've heard my wife say I didn't know whether he was going to come back in time or not. We are fortunate to have 7 children. And all of them very successful in what they do. They're good at what they do. These guys here flying those things up and back and forth, they were the heroes. I could say, but I won't, that we helped them a lot, and we made them heroes, but we didn't. They were heroes before they ever got in that airplane. They just didn't. It didn't show up till they got up there, and God forbid, in a war, that they did what they had to do, and they came back, a lot of them. And for that, and a lot of other people, we can sit here and talk about it today. I think that we've learned a lesson. And I hope with all my heart that the generations coming up don't ever let it happen again like it happened with Hitler, and let it go so far as that we have to go over there and repair the damage again. It just, and you will have it just as sure as you're a foot high. If something happens, there's going to be a certain amount of people that are going to say, don't go over there. Stay home. Let them fight their own war. But sooner or later, it's going to come to us, sure as the world. And so, please don't let it ever happen again. Hit it before it gets that bad. It isn't easy sometimes to be free. Sometimes you have to work at it.
The story Mr. Leighty told was a perfect fit for me because I have always held close to my heart the ideals of the greatest generation and the planes with which the war was fought. I was honored to make a documentary for this program telling the story of a non-combat role during the Second World War, as roles such as Mr. Leighty's often go unrecognized in history. The lessons which Mr. Leighty learned will stay with me for the rest of my life, and I hope that younger generations will continue to tell the stories of our veterans through these documentaries and learn the true meaning of freedom isn't free.